the marquee matchup of Week 12 featured the best quarterbacks of this generation, locking up for a 14th time and for a 10th time in their history. Tom Brady topped Peyton Manning. Incredibly exciting game. A 34-31 overtime win for the Patriots over the Broncos. Gary Ross, just first things first, Gary, overall impressions from this game we saw this weekend.
Well, just that the Patriots continue to be, incredibly resilient, and Tom Brady is a quarterback that I guess no matter what the deficit is, even against one of the great quarterbacks of all time, that he's capable of bringing his team back.
Well, obviously the game went from being a major buzzkill to being a thriller for those of you that stayed up like me and watched the second half, thankfully.
Me as well, Ross.
There you go, right? But, to me what jumps out is, number one, the Denver Broncos had over 250 yards rushing, and they still lost the game. I mean, that never, ever happened. And then the game was really about turnovers. It was really about mistakes as much as anything else, which is not what you expect when these two teams get together.
Well, Ross, here's the thing. I mean, we talk a lot about Peyton Manning in the cold, right, and whether or not he can play in that weather. And we know only 150 passing yards for Manning. That was a low number compared to what we're seeing this year. Only one interception, though. What do you make of his performance, and do you think the weather was having a profound effect on him Sunday night?
I don't know if I would say a profound effect, but I think we're getting to the point now where there's enough of a sample size that you can't just dismiss it. You have to look at it and say, he does not perform as well. At least his teams don't. They don't win as many games, and who else are you going to put it on? I know there were some turnovers and obviously the muffed punt in overtime, but they rushed the ball for over 250 yards. When you do that, Peyton Manning in the passing game, that should have been open. He's actually lucky some other passes were not picked off. It was not a good performance by number 18.
Well, I think clearly Belichick set up his defense to give up the rushing yards. It kind of reminded me of the Super Bowl against the Bills all those years ago, where they said, we'll let if Thurman Thomas can beat us, fine, but we're not going to let Jim Kelly in the passing offense beat us. So I think they concentrated more on stopping the passing game. But I agree with Roth. There is a sample size here now of Peyton struggling in the cold weather. You saw it in the playoff game against Baltimore last season, where he really looked old in the cold. And when you factor in, when you factor in that all his home games in Indianapolis were played indoors.
Right. Well, and you look at this year, and obviously we know that Denver gets cold when you talk about playoff time of year, and then the Super Bowl is going to be in cold weather. And we're watching Tom Brady's passes cut through the wind, threw for over 200 yards into the wind on Sunday, and there was a strong one. So, Ross, does that mean we end up looking at the Patriots as the better postseason team this year than the Broncos projecting ahead?
I'm not willing to go there yet, but certainly I think that it seems like they're almost on even ground at this point, which is just unbelievable. I mean, this year might be the greatest example of the excellence of Bill Belichick and Tom Brady that we've ever seen. We've documented how many guys are out for that team, and for them to still be humming along. And until the last 3 weeks, Tom Brady was having, by the way, by far his worst season. It is just remarkable that they look like they are in prime position to get a first-round bye.
And you know what to say to the favorites, Gary? Because you've told us they're going to be in the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, I think they will.
Yeah.
I would say, based on what I saw Sunday night, that I do believe that New England, that they have to, can win in Denver. And that's a huge thing, because if you don't necessarily need to have the home field advantage to get to a Super Bowl, Tom Brady can win anywhere. And with all the moving parts like we've talked about all this year, I think they're finally, got a lot of people back. They're healthy. And when you think about the fact they've lost 3 games, but 2 of them, really bizarre. The game against the Jets with that pushing thing that gave the Jets another shot at the field goal, and then, the game in Carolina where they picked up the pass interference thing. If those didn't happen, I know ifs and whatever, but they can have 1 loss at this point.
I think that is how they actually have changed that phrase, ifs and whatever.
Yeah,
that's a new terminology.
But they shouldn't beat the Saints, though, Gary. I mean, you can go both ways on that.
Absolutely. With losses, wins, exactly.
They had no business beating the Saints in that game.
Now, you end up getting a result in overtime in this game. It happened in a fluke way, and it wasn't the way you want a great game to end, but you did have a result. Meanwhile, where Ross was this weekend, you had a tie. I mean, I guess that's a result, but you had a tie between Green Bay and Minnesota, and so it brings into focus, Ross, the new overtime rules, and your thoughts on those.
I despise them. I don't like them at all. I never have. There was never a reason to have these new overtime rules. Why? There was not an issue with sudden death before. People point out the fact that, the team that won the coin toss was winning 58% of the time. Well, that was before they moved the kickoff up 5 yards. That makes a difference. Now teams are getting the ball even further, and it's even tougher to go down and get any points. The Green Bay Packers moved the ball 77 yards on the first drive, including a great catch by Jarrett Boykin, yet that field goal did not allow them to win. I was in the stadium. Nobody felt good after the game. Nobody feels good after a tie. Everybody feels like a loser. Both teams, the players, the coaches, even the fans. Is that what the fans want to pay for? Who wants a tie? This is America. We don't like ties.
So and obviously, Ross, you could also just keep playing until there's a winner as well. You don't have to go back to first score wins.
Well, they're never going to do that because of the injury factor. No coach wants to play 6 quarters. I do agree with Ross, though. If defense and special teams are indeed 2/3 of the game, then if you kick off in overtime, play good special teams. Don't let a run back come to the 40-yard line, and then play good defense. Because if you stop a team 3 and out on its first possession of overtime and force a punt, then you're going to wind up with good field position, and they can kick the field goal to win the game. And I also thought it was really interesting what Bill Belichick did in overtime Sunday night by kicking off after having the option. He never ever would have done that if a field goal would have ended the game. But he was confident in his defense that Peyton Manning was not going to drive the field to get a touchdown.
Plus, it's overtime. It's extra time. It's designed to decide a winner, to declare an outcome. Otherwise, let's just end it at the end of regulation. The 60 minutes of regulation are fair. And if it's that easy to kick a field goal on your opening drive, how come arguably the 2 best quarterbacks of all time, Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, neither one of them were able to even get their team in field goal position on the first 4 possessions of overtime, 2 each? If it wasn't for the muffed punt, we probably would have had 2 ties on the same day. And maybe that's what I'll root for now, so we can go back to the old rules.